everybody. It's another of the CCSC Victory Rap Sports Podcast with Jullienne RJ in one corner, and in the red corner beside me,
Dale the coach, Eggleton.
And once again, we're going to talk to another outstanding Central Coast sports person. We go the slam dunk with this one, Coach, but before we get into that, we've got to thank our sponsors, our major sponsor, Central Coast Sports College. Good on to the guys for being with us once again. And a brand new sponsor, and he was a guest a few weeks ago, Paul Singleton and Easy Mix Concrete. So fantastic to have them aboard. And mate, I mentioned slam dunk. This guy has done it all in basketball.
Certainly has, RJ. Tim Hudson. The sport of basketball has been good to Tim, and basketball has certainly been the beneficiary of Tim's involvement and contribution to the sport. As a player, coach, mentor, scout and administrator, Tim has challenged himself and has been successful in all these categories of the game. He played at 3 NBL clubs, the Sydney Kings winning an NBL championship in 2002-03, the Hunter Pirates and the Western Sydney Razorbacks, totalling 47 games at that level. He played high school and college basketball in the USA. He played state league for Central Coast, Bankstown and Hornsby. He has held coaching positions at the Sydney Kings, the Western Sydney Razorbacks, Central Coast Crusaders, Hornsby Ku-ring-gai Spiders and the New South Wales Under-20 team. He's been the Sydney Kings head of basketball, an NBA scout for the Houston Rockets, and has mentored and helped many young players on their pathway in the game. Tim is held in high regard by all in the game as a technically outstanding player and shooter, and as a coach that emphasises building a positive culture, an enjoyable environment, and with the right skill set, success will come. And also, RJ, he's also, like us, a Western Suburbs Magpie supporter.
God love him for that.
It's our pleasure to welcome you, Tim, to the Victory Rap.
That last bit, that was my favourite.
Tim, that's quite a career that Dale's just run through. It's like almost like an autobiography, mate. But great to have you as part of our Victory Rap Sports podcast. And you look back, and we're going to cover your career and life in basketball. So, congratulations on what you've achieved, mate.
Oh, thanks, fellas. I feel like it's a little overglossed there, Dale. I'm not much for sort of celebrating my own.
We'll do it for you. We'll do it for you.
Yeah. No, but it's been a great journey, and I think just being a part of the game is awesome. And you mentioned there about mentoring. I just love to see people on their own pathways. That's the real driver for me. Being around sports and growing up, talking about the Magpies growing up out in Western Sydney. You're in the park all the time, and win, lose or draw. I mean, there was a lot more losses than wins with the Pies, but that's what sport was really about, and it's just about being amongst it and backing your team, and
supporting them through thick and thin, isn't it?
100%. 100%. No, I still love the Magpies, Yeah.
Well, Tim, tell us about growing up, the family, and the connection you had to the Central Coast at an early age.
Yeah, well, my nana grew up Rimba, and there's a very sort of strong connection there. She was sort of like the glow of the family. She was just a beautiful human being. She went to Gosford High, and my grandfather, who they actually penned letters over in the war before they even met. He was sort of playing cards with a mate who just happened to have a sister at home, and he sort of won a card game to be able to write to her, which was cool. So it's that competitive juices, like coming through generations, I guess. But he just said he wanted to come up, from Lidcombe to Ourimbah, and back in those days it was half a day's journey.
Exactly,
But he played that 1 year of football and played with the Sharp brothers and Pat Calfee and all these guys, the Ourimbah Magpies, and so hearing those stories, it only sort of drilled in. The Western Suburbs Magpies, but they lived across the road from, well, not across the road, but just a walk down the street from Lidcombe Oval. So they used to sort of walk over there. So he came up, played 1 year, just to make sure he sort of, got nan up, in and around the family, and he had a tremendous year. They had huge success. He was only there for one of the premierships, and I believe he was, he was the best and fairest, and he just loved it that much. You know, he worked 3 jobs. He didn't play professional football. I mean, nobody did back then. I mean, Noel Sharp was just, I mean, the stories he used to tell, just, you know, I just visualise it now, just sitting in the couch next to him and not VB, a 4X in hand, that was his drink. You know, you had to sit down and have a beer with Pa. He was going to tell you a story. That was just how it was. And, and it was hearing some of those sort of stories, like Noel Sharp getting picked up in the Kangaroos tour. You know, I mean, I'm not even that connected to rugby league other than following the West Tigers and the Magpies sort of line and continuing that. But those stories are certainly rich. And I think that's kind of what makes sport so special. Really.
Yeah. When did basketball appear on the radar of Tim Hudson? At what age did you start getting into that, which then led you on your journey that's, you know, we're talking to you now?
Yeah, well, my dad was just, he loved basketball. He was, that was his sport. He's every chance he got, he was going down there, he was playing, he was coaching, he was doing it all. And again, at a time where, you couldn't make that your priority, so you did your work and all your sport was around that. And in fact, when I said, I'm gonna have a real crack at basketball, and sort of walked away from football, played rugby league sort of growing up, and I remember my grandfather took me about 2 weeks to talk to me. Everybody else, played there. I mean, Aidan Kirk's my cousin. He's the real story. He played with the New Zealand Warriors in the NRL. And, going across the basketball was something different. But Pa was great. He'd come down to the next basketball tournament, and I was just something a special thing back on.
Well, Tim, you think of basketball and you always think of the United States of America, and you went there at an early age, high school basketball. Tell us how that come about and the mentors you had over there.
Yeah, well, it came through Dad and his basketball. So, he played, we grew up, went to Bankstown. That was a really big association at that point. It was the biggest. And he was always in a Masters tournament, and talking to this guy, Eddie Palavinskas, who's a legend. I mean, he still holds a record. I think he was is the highest point scorer for an Australian Olympic Games, or maybe it was until Paddy might have got there or got close to it. I think he just got close to it.
Yep.
But I think he scored 48, put Australia in the top 8 bracket for the first time in history. So he's a legendary, the first sort of legitimate player to get drafted in the NBA, the New Orleans Jazz. It's not the New Orleans Pelicans. The Jazz moved to Utah. Obviously, the New Orleans sort of culture down there is jazz music and whatever else. But anyway, so to be able to go over to high school there, first of all, he was at this Masters tournament, and he said he's looking for a player. And old man came home and he said, I've been talking to Eddie Palavinskas, and he's got a school over there. And a mate of his, Rick Petrie, sort of said, he feels something he can play. And, so they've sort of talked and said, right, you want to go to America? I went, yep. It was half a second to think about that. Flew over, all by myself, 17 years old. Didn't know where I was going, who I was living with, what I was doing, and flew into New Orleans and drove up into Baton Rouge, Louisiana, through all the bayous and whatever else, and very, very cool, very different. Was a culture shock. Was like going back in time with some of the old movies, just how they were culturally, and spent 2 years there, and it was really cool. Just
Yeah, a change of culture, different country. You're a 17-year-old. You're a teenager. How long did it take you to adapt to the way they played over there and a different level?
I mean, it was kind of like a small private school, and it crossed over and played in the Mississippi, which was kind of unique in itself as well. And I must say, there was a girl on the girls' team named Christy Sides who ended up coaching Caitlin Clark. She was a legend. She was All-American, so there was a lot of hoo-ha to that. What the Americans are like, they want to blow everything up. But look, there was a few athletes, but it's kind of so spread at that high school level, and that's where the Americans get really good, because they just, it just gets so more and more competitive. They got a huge competitive player pool. Everybody's got a hoop in their backyard. So it really sort of turns on from there. But like the juniors in Australia are really strong. Like the COE, you get a lot of players coming through. We're talking draft picks now, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of a different game. So you kind of slotted in, slotted in well, and it was good, great experience. But I couldn't help myself though. Rugby league, I wanted to show a few guys how to tackle, and I crossed over, played a bit of footy, and ended up getting injured, missing half my senior year, which was a bit crazy. But I still got college offers or whatever, smaller ones. I had some bigger interest, but yeah, it was just I just wanted to come home, and I came back home for a bit, and yeah, and then came back. That's why I ended up at the Central Coast. Well, I came back initially. I ended up playing youth league with Rob Beveridge, another legend, won a gold medal, international tournament, and won multiple NBL championships. And he coached us in the sort of grand final up here at Terrigal.
Oh, yeah.
We had the youth league and state league double. And, so I think spending all that time in America, I had a key to the high school gym there, and it was just train, and then you go, whoa, hold on a sec. All that when you're away and you come back, you kind of see how quickly, it's hard when, you're a young person training, you don't realise, how you're tracking, how much better you're getting and whatnot. But when you come back after being away, it's like, oh, okay, that was really worth it. So it's good to be able to share those stories with kids, because often they try and, particularly in today's day and age, they want everything so quick.
Any romances over there? You getting any romances while you're in America?
No comment. No.
Tim, let's talk about the influence of Eddie Palabinch, because people in the game now talk about technically how good you were in shooting. Was that grounding from Eddie Palabinch just date back to then?
Oh, yeah. Eddie grew up in Lithuania before moving to Australia. Our parents were from Lithuania. So he kind of like had that intense Eastern European, like, I remember the first time I was shooting, he slapped my left arm and he goes, get that out of there, man, straighten it up. But his pinky was the thickness of my thumb. He just had these hands that were like just glove the ball, but he was so meticulous on how to shoot the ball, like just even the release out of the hand. And so I remember the first time I started training with him, he'd say, all right, stand against that wall and just shoot it up against the wall. I spent just an hour just shooting it up against the wall. And you think about, like the Donald Bradman, the
golf ball on the
exactly.
water tank,
And Eddie was like that. He just had that, enigma about him, that he was just so detailed. I'll never forget just driving the car. He's taken me to some tournament, and I said, what's CKXL on the back of your car? What's that? The letter C and K. He said, seek to excel. Get better,
even things
find
like
your ways how. And so I probably learnt more from Eddie, just watching Eddie and dialing back on how he played. A guy named Ken Cole, who's an absolute legend out here, still got the record for the best, NBL record. He was, came through Sydney, legend. But he came over on tours and he sort of, pulled me aside, wanted to work with me. And then he told me, because he was coming to visit Eddie, he coached Eddie. And so I got to see the sort of the master and the apprentice, which was kind of master and the master, you know what I mean? So to hear how he sort of coached him in the game situation, he was a master sort of game tactician, and Eddie was this master technician, like this. That's all the shooting stuff. But anyways, we worked out from there. So Eddie would teach me, how to just, he was just all about scoring and shooting. I remember the first game I got there, I'm like, Eddie, you haven't gone over the defense. What are we doing on defense? And I'm coming out trying to be the starting guard, lead the team, all that sort of stuff. And he goes, I don't care about defense. Just score more points than the opposition. What?
Simple. Easy. Yeah.
But no, literally, he did not care what we did on defense. So it was kind of cool though, as a player coming over. I mean, everyone, young kids, they want to shoot the ball, and hoop, and so you get out there and you got this big crowd, the cheerleaders, and you can smell the popcorn walking through the through the stadium. It was like a TV set, But they're just out there shooting, but. Yeah, the repetition, the day-to-day, Eddie was just so fanatical, but he used to have me lying on the ground too and just working on follow-through, and I'd do right hand, left hand, right hand, and then it just started to go, man, right hand, left hand, 20 each hand. Something so simple. And then I ended up, there was some big shooting tournament they had where you won the state and you went to the nationals, and I came back and I was just prime shooter. Before I left, I had a nice shot, it was okay, but now it's kind of like, ooh, it's like.
Well, it must have paid off, mate, because 97, you're back with Bankstown, you won the Youth and State League Grand Final at Terrigal, and named MVP, Finals MVP, New South Wales Player of the Year. So the experience in America, when coming back, it was like a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a great experience. Playing at Terrigal, loved it. I remember we were staying at the old backpackers, in and around Terrigal.
Yep.
And sort of, get ready for the game and the finals and whatnot. And it just had this great feel. So, and I, reminisce on how I used to holiday. We used to holiday up at Terrigal all the time.
Yeah.
I remember before going and meeting Eddie Palaminskas, I watched this movie Pistol Pete Maravich, and I used to walk from this place where we used to stay down to, and I'd get into Terrigal High School, and just the old hoops, bent up, old wooden backboards, and I'm busting out all these moves and then running back up the hill and down, like it's these kind of things that you kind of latch to in your stories. But Eddie actually got drafted to the New Orleans Jazz where Pistol, Pete was, which was cool in itself. In there. But anyways, he, Eddie ended up going to Europe because sitting behind Pistol Pete Maravich. His stories over there are legendary. But so Terrigal had that effect. And then I kind of got called into a team that my father actually started many years ago. It was the West Sydney Slammers, a guy. Robbie Cadee, another legend of the game. Jason, his sons, is a legend. Played 450 games in the NBL. But the kind of Bankstown used to be in the NBL, and they came together with the Supersonics, former Sydney Kings.
Yep.
But Dad used to tell the story fondly about how talk to Robbie, and he's like, hey man, let's get team back, for Bankstown back in the NBL, put it together, something out west, the city's got it all, but there's nothing out west. And I tried before. And he said, well, what about Liverpool? Because Liverpool's a city, it's got no sporting team.
Sure.
And the history there, talking about rugby league, that's where Canterbury came and bought the team, and they were going to build a big football stadium out there, an indoor basketball stadium in the Oasis Centre, it's still West Tigers territory there.
That's right.
But so they just kind of took over that. I ironically went to high school with Ben Anderson, and the son of Chris Anderson, and we went to Manil, Shifty Sherwin, Brent Sherwin, and a lot of NBL, like Corey Hughes, NRL legends there with Canterbury. But but back with that team, we got sort of brought into that team, and I remember being there and just hearing lots of stuff. Like you kind of, I don't know, maybe it was as overthinking it myself. Like, you're here because it's your dad's team. I said, look, I remember saying to Gordy McLeod, and Gordy's a legend and a super competitive, super loyal guy. I remember saying to him, look, Gordy, I just don't think I want to play here. I think I want to prove myself
on your own,
on my own. So I don't feel like I'm here because it's my dad's team.
Sure.
And he kind of looked at me like, really? Like, I thought, isn't that a good thing? I don't think it went down too well. But he was respectful of it, and I went down and played in the Seabull with Aubrey Wodonga. Lasted there only about 3 months. Actually played with a guy named Brian Pepper, and his son Elijah Pepper is playing now in the NBA. In the NBL, putting up 50-point games over in the West. Anyways, finally how it all works out. But I left there and then came back up to the Central Coast. My brother's like, man, I'll come up to play up here, and he's the football guy, but he was like, I'm going to play on the Central Coast. I'm like, I want to play with my brother, so I came up here.
Yeah.
And then so I moved up here full time, and that was back in '98.
Yeah.
And haven't moved since. I mean, obviously going back and forth, went a little bit of college, different NBL stuff, but it was always back and forth here.
Yeah.
Well, Tim, you still wanted to play at that higher level as well, and back to the Western Sydney Razorbacks as well, who are a feeder club in the Seaball. Tell us about that, going back there after you said that you spoke to Gordy McLeod about you wanted to film Tim Hudson's career.
Well, even so prior to that, I'll probably share with you before my first gig with the Kings. So I went to high school in America, college in America. I went to Western Wyoming because a lot of those opportunities sort of faded away. So I had this JUCO that Kenny Cole reached out to me. He said, "Oh, there's this JUCO. You want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Kind of put it away. I thought I'd bring it back, but I just couldn't get on the court. I got on a few times, but I'd actually fractured my foot. And the surgeon over there that I saw, he said, "Look, your heel arch is collapsed and you got no cartilage between your joints," because I had this it was weird, like rheumatoid reaction to a virus. I had CMV virus. I was crook as Rookwood, couldn't get on the court, busted foot, lost 20 kilos, I think it was, which was crazy,
Wow.
But I still got on a couple of times, got going, but I just I'm not right. And anyway, the surgeon looked at it, he says, "No, you need to fuse that." And I'm like, "Fuse it?" I'm like, so I was kind of like, all right, body's no good. We've got someone, a surgeon saying you can't play basketball anymore. We can fuse it. You can walk around, as you get older, play golf. I'm like, what? Like that. Nah, surely there's some future. It should be good. So I came back, parked on the beach back. I'm going back to the Central Coast, man. I ate good food, and I got to just parked on the beach, and I'm gonna do deep breathing every day. I'm gonna eat really well. I'm gonna get back into the Eddie Palavinska stuff, shooting, ball handling, and then I went down and tried out with the Canberra Cannons and just missed out. And I was playing on the Central Coast. A guy named Rex Nottage came up to coach. He's another legend in basketball. Coached us up here, built it up, from largely nothing. And we got to the finals, all that sort of stuff, which was great. And then the next year I get in with the Kings, which was unbelievable. And there with Brian Goorjian and Billy Tomlinson, coaching now. He's coached, Australian team. He's an absolute legend, best to do it in the NBL. But to experience that, and all sorts of personalities like, Shane Hammerhill, and you got, Matt Nielsen, who's with the Spurs, who's a fantastic leader, there's so many guys to talk about. David Stiff, who he left basketball, won the most championships along with CJ Bruton, Damian Martin, and Jesse Wagstaff. But he went and was the psychologist for Collingwood Magpies for a year. Won the flag. All this pressure and whatnot. Throw another Magpies in there.
Keep them going, mate.
Yeah, Stiffy is affectionately known. He just had this way, man. He had this mantra about him. He would meditate in the back of the weights room. Everyone's getting geared up for a session, but you find all these personalities in sports, which is crazy. Yeah. So we win a championship there, which is great. And then I'm having a great year here, and Rex is talking to some coaches and whatever, and so the Pirates are the new franchise coming through, and trying to have some put on some big games and whatnot, because the pressure's coming, the talk's there, and had Doc Hurley, the former Olympian legend. He rolls in the Newcastle studded team. They got like 7 or 8 guys that either had played in the NBL or coming up to play in the NBL, Melmers, Barnett's, keep going. Anyway, so I didn't even realise this, but I'm just in it with my guys. And our local guys, kind of came up through just representative. Nobody's playing in the NBL or anything like that. And they're just such a loyal group of guys. And we follow them. A bunch of them West Tigers fans, so that's great. We've got a little group chat. But I ended up we just lost to them, and I was so frustrated. I walked out, one of my buddies said, "Man, you have 52. I was like, "What?" He said, "You have 52. I'm like, "Yeah, but we didn't win." I was just so frustrated with that, but you could sort of feel it all building up. So the Hunter Pirates end up, give us an offer, and they say, "Oh yeah, you can score points. Can you play D?" And it's like, yeah, all right. So in a couple of days, I go guard Jason Smith, the captain of Australia. I'm gonna lock him up, and I'm gonna give him, 40. I think I had 36 or something that game, whatever. Against Southern, we had a big rivalry. But then they called the Razorbacks and said, "Hey, you know, Tim's been in your score or whatever, and they kind of said, oh, you know, this is how it came back to, I don't know whether Rex was, maybe he was trying to fire me up, but he's like, oh, you know, he's got a bad attitude, you know what I mean? It was like, you know, it was like, what? You know, like, no, man, like, I really wanted to be there. I just, you know what I mean? But I don't know whether it was that. I mean, you know, I was probably young and immature and whatever else, you know, you make lots of mistakes or whatever, but maybe not really mindful of it. So that sat in the back of my mind. You know, I played for the Hunter Pirates and I loved it. It was great. And but then I really wanted to play for West Sydney then. It was like, no, I really want to be there.
Yeah.
And so I went through all their pre-season, and I knew they kind of had one spot available. I went down and worked out with the Melbourne Tigers, Lindsay Gaze and Andrew Gaze, and that was great. They were real welcoming. And then bang, they offered me that last spot, and I was so grateful. Like, it absolutely meant the world to me, you know. Yeah. So we played out that season, and I ended up being an award winner. There was, you know, 3 awards. Sammy Mack got both of them, MVP and Players Player, and I got what's called the WE Award, which was Gordy McLeod's thing of Gordy wasn't the coach, he moved on, and Mark Watkins was a new coach come in, but it's something they, you know, took great pride on, you know, like it was a work ethic award, we as in, you know, teammate, and, you know, built up a lot around it, so it was pretty cool to have that. And they said, oh, you got a couple of kids now the next year, and how about you move into the coach? And I was like, oh, I'm not quite done yet, man. But anyway, so you took that on. It was just, you know, great to be a part of it. You know, your emotions are like, oh, no, I want to, you know, continue to do different things. But, you know, I was just happy with that. And particularly when I got told, you know, I couldn't play since being back to see a surgeon. He said, you probably should have got surgery. But yeah, anyways, it is what it is, and being able to get through and have that experience, and yeah, so I'm very blessed from that respect.
Absolutely. We're going to be back with more of Tim Hudson and his great basketball story, but sports fans, a massive shout out to our major sponsor, Central Coast Sports College, CCSC. If you're a parent of a young aspiring athlete on the coast, or if you are that athlete, you need to hear this. CCSC is not your average school. It's the only school in New South Wales with a full-time, fully integrated sports program every single day. They're all about helping young athletes pursue their sporting dreams without sacrificing their education, and developing the whole person both on and off the field. And as those student athletes move into senior high, CCSC takes it a step further with real-world learning, internships and experiences to help them figure out their future. So if you're looking for a school where young athletes truly take responsibility for their learning and their sporting aspirations, check out CCSC, Central Coast Sports College. You can find out more at their website, ccsc.nsw.edu.au. Give your child the best of both worlds.
Tim, you mentioned there you start dabbling as an assistant coach at the Western Sydney Razorbacks. You come back to the Central Coast. You know, they're starting to get things together, bringing it all together with the Crusaders. Did you continue on with the playing as well as coaching when you come back?
Yeah, I did. I to be honest, I really struggled with that. So I got called back, you know, to the Kings. You know, in Rebellion, you know, it was here Moose, and you know, he asked me to come in as an assistant coach with the Sydney Kings, and that's when, you know, they brought the Crusaders. Said, well, it's a long story, but I'll try and go as short as possible. But we've had these 2 associations. Well, more than 2 associations, like 4 associations, but 2 sort of east and west kind of, you know, the Central Coast, which was Gossett City Rebels, and the Central Coast Waves, and you had the entrance, and so, I mean, Central Coast is so well spread, but I kind of felt like there's this, you know, it's nice competitive rivalry with a little bit of conflict, and, you know, had a few, you know, great people ask when I first came up, because I came up to the Waves because that's just where my brother was, and playing an old gym there in Gosford with pigeons flying around. Like, you leave, it was very, very different, but I truly loved it, the people more than anything. But coming together was, you know, it was kind of interesting to see. You know, the Rebels broke away, became the Rebels, you know, a rebellion over in there, and they got their stadium, and they had these families that put up their own houses. Like they, you know, took a great risk to do it, which was incredible. And then those that were left behind, well, we're going to get our stadiums, and they were in the old youth club. And then they built the you know, council owned CCYC,
Right.
Central Coast, youth club.
Yeah.
So I kind of went out there, and then there was kind of two rivalries. It kind of kept coming together and breaking away, and coming together and breaking away. And it was like, it's kind of like, come on, surely we can all, come together, and it's one Central Coast,
Sure. Yeah.
But so particularly on a senior level, juniors are spread out right around. So coming together, the Crusaders came together, and then maybe it wasn't sustainable, and so they broke it down, and they sort of went down a level. They didn't play at the top level, so I went down to Sydney and played there, and then came back just before coming back to Kings. So I'm into coaching. I'm loving coaching. Okay, I got the Crusaders, and I'm coaching, and then it's sort of like, it's like that battle. Like, man, I can go on, I can do that, you know what I mean? I could just quick fix that or whatnot. So I ended up sort of coming back in and playing, and it was a bit of a mess, and I couldn't quite put it away. And I think a lot of players, of any sports, when they're playing, they find that hard, particularly when you're in that place where you're such a pivotal role. Like in the NBL, I probably spent more time in this position, sitting down on the bench, to be honest with you. But in your local league, it's like, it's just so engaging with the, community. Obviously, you guys, and the community media is. I always find it awesome. Regional areas, Central Coast, even down Albury was fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really what drives the community in sport. It's really, really cool. So anyway, getting that was hard, but there. So I ended up just more focusing on the NBL and the coaching there, and then I come back and started playing again. I think I played. I think my last year was maybe 2017 at 40. We went to the finals. We just missed out, the grand final. But I did as 1 year as player coach. We got to the final again. No NBL players. You got NBL players around the other teams, and we went right to. We lost on a last second shot down in Sutherland against Manly, who won it all. And I think they won the grand final by 30 or something. So we were just a whisker from being able to coach that and playing that and whatnot. So but yeah, and then sort of rolled in through the King stuff and sort of started to put that aside and focused on being a dad.
Mate, looking at your timeline, it was like usually 2 years, maybe 3 years, wherever you were. Were the offers coming up while you're at a particular club, or were you looking for different opportunities for yourself? The timelines with all the clubs that you were at and part of, Razorbacks, the Waves, or whatever, Kings, was something come up and you said, I'm going to go there because I've got an offer or something?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The reality is, it's going to sound crazy, I just didn't want to leave home. So I stayed on the Central Coast, and I would commute down to the Kings, or even like in the pre-season, I'm going down for early morning training sessions. We'd lift, and then we'd go and get on court, and anybody who's been around Gorgon's, sessions know, they're not easy. They certainly weren't back then. But then we'd come back over here, and I just didn't want to miss all the stuff we were doing up here. So we would train all night, and but back then you just felt like you could just go and sleep it off and wake up and go again, But it was just everything was relative to home. The family was more important to me. Just what I'd gone through in America, and the health stuff, and just that personal attachment here to the Central Coast, meant a lot to me. So so it was like, as long as it was all within reach of
traveling
the Central Coast.
That's right.
I mean, obviously I'd moved down for a period of time, when it was like right in the meter season too much, And to be honest, that probably distracted me too much. I never forget, when I was playing with the Pirates, we'd had variety, and I was just in this state where the club was trying to hang on, and if they didn't have the women's team, they weren't going to have the men's team, and so I'm trying to make myself as a pro in the time of the NBL, and they didn't pay much back then, nothing like they do now. So I was trying to play there, come back, play here, and coach the women.
Sure.
And it was a total rebuild, so you just get stretched out, and I remember talking to the club about or other things to try and help, and I don't know, it just meant a lot to me, and I think I sacrificed a lot. When people, I never forget Bruce Bolden telling me I had 30 in a preseason game. He said, "Tim, now's your time." He said, "You gotta." Again, against that was Doc Hurley. I don't know whether it was something about that top legendary coach. I wanted to get a scalp in a game like that, but preseason game, playing for the Razorbacks, and we put him away. I had 30, and he's like, "Man, now's your time. We're going to start your next game, and you really need to, man, just another big game, scoring wise and all that sort of stuff." And I just why the Wee Award meant so much to me. I said, "No, man, I just want this team culture to be great. I just want to be a part of this where I'm contributing, And I think back on it as a pro, where you're trying to say, all right, I need to take my game to the next level and get momentum and try and create that career where I can get better pay, all that sort of stuff,
Sure.
I kind of even, I just had a different mindset back then, rightly or wrongly. I think the next game I stunk it up from the field. I started, but I think we won. I think we went down. But anyways, it's just when you're in that mode, in that the professional sports, and you'll get all sorts of, pros, and I'll tell you, it's a real roller coaster. There's a lot of emotion to it, and it is a little bit. It's hard for professionals to put away the self because there's so much bearing on their pathway and their career. So this is where the higher levels you go up, for coaches, for executives, the whole box and dice, seeing this through the NBA was really, really cool because you're talking $100 million contracts.
Sure, yeah.
The try and breed a selflessness in the midst of personal pursuit is a real challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim, tell us about the Sydney Kings. You were there as a player, you returned as an assistant coach, and you're also head of basketball there. They're a club that expect success. Was there a lot of pressure, did you feel there, to succeed in all those roles?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. Remember, going in for the first year at the Kings after, they'd gone into administration and were out for a couple of years, and it was a real sort of dark time for the NBL. It started to pick back up, have a bit of a wave then, and we got back in, and all right, coming into coach, and there's no offices, there was nothing set up. They're trying to work out a venue. We finally got in the venue, and they're like, "Oh, we don't have any basketballs." It's like, man, we're really starting from the base,
I'll bring my own in.
Yeah. And people thought, oh, Sydney Kings, big city, they got the big budget, they got, and we had a low budget, so trying to work these and scrap and move and get people in, particularly after the club had gone broke, and it was an interesting rebuild and environment, but there's nothing like getting thrown in the thick of it. And I think we won one game. It had a real tough effect on Moose. Coaching. We won one and lost 14 straight.
Yeah.
But I never forget Dave Stiff. I said, we actually we got over the top of the Hawks, I think that weight of expectations and broke that off, but there was still a feeling of, we're 2 wins, 14 losses. And we're going to Melbourne. And the Melbourne, like the Hawks were down in the ladder, Melbourne were right there, up, the top of the ladder at the other end. And I called Stiffy up. I said, Stiffy, knowing what he did with Collingwood, and I said to Moose, man, he'd be a great person to talk to the guys, And anyway, so we talk with Stiffy, and he sort of brings us in. He's telling us these old, sort of Chinese proverb stories, which is really cool. I'll share one. He said, pressure's a little bit like, you got to find a clear mind, and the old Chinese proverb is, the he who shoots for the bronze pan hits the target every time. He who shoots for the silver pan hits the target every other time. He who shoots for the gold pan has double vision. and the moral of the story, don't make it any bigger than what it needs to be. You're playing a game of basketball, be very clear-minded. Sure. There was another thing about talking the stats of playing through the fourth quarter and the fifth quarter. So we went out with this fifth quarter mentality, and we went and beat Melbourne Tigers on their home court, you know, and then after that we went on a big run and we won 7 of the next 9 games. The only 2 games we lost, one there was a tech foul which just flipped the game and, you know, just came out of our grasp, and the other one was at New Zealand on their court, who were the team of that era. And again, we had them, you know, so we're that close to going from 1 win, 14 losses to now making. But like if we actually had won all those games, we could have snuck into the playoffs. Now it's extreme, you know, to be able to do it, but talk about those extremes and the pressures and whatnot. But it's a cool journey.
Mate, 2007-08 Crusaders, new team, so you're part of a brand new entity. The following year, no team, and you've gone down to Hornsby Spiders.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, you know, time where clubs just started, it's starting to develop, goes off, you've got to find somewhere else to play. Luckily, it was within 100 k's of living on the coast, so that's all right, isn't it? So how was your time there?
Well, it was 07 and 08, so different to the NBL season. So we had 2 seasons, and we made the finals both years. You know, we just made the semi-finals on one, and we made the quarterfinals on another. So we were relative to our team, what we were playing against, you know, in the league, but it was very, very disappointing. I was gutted because I tried to work so hard to get all these, you know, my old man even chipped in some money, and we, you know, there was part of the name of the team and all the different colours from the different areas, and then it was like, well, you know, for that team, okay, we're not playing, you know, it's like, man, you know, like, anyways, so I went down to Hornsby and excuse me, big Bretty Wilcox, and a legend teammate, do anything for you, give you the shirt off his back, just, you know. So we went down to Hornsby, and he couldn't make it through the season. I nearly almost didn't make it through the season because there's a lot of travel and a lot in your life then, but we went to the playoffs again. That was cool. And I actually stupidly, you know, again, taking off quite more than I can chew. I coached the women's team at the same time. And, I started to. But then I got this guy, Shannon Seaborn, involved, you know, who played with Joe Ingles, and his wife was playing. And I'm like, man, you know, he couldn't play because he'd had a heart attack. Man, that's a cool story. Look it up, how he come back from that and coached all the way through. He's the best coach. One of the best coaches in Australia, period. He's won multiple Coach of the Years in the WNBL and coached a gold medal at the Junior World Championships. Was phenomenal. But he's part of one of my claims to fame, getting him started in coaching. And you could see he's so engaged and so good. I'm like, man, you need to take over. Let me be your assistant. I kind of fainted right out. So I was just playing and just supporting him and him getting through. But so that was cool. And I was working down there at Barker College, and they've built up an incredible program. Got another Central Coast legend, Jared Scoins. He's down there running the program. He played with us at the Kings, and he's a legend. So that was great, and they really looked after me. But when there was a very tough time in the community. The Coca guys had lost their son Michael, which was really, really tough. Hit the community and school and everything. And so I said, no, I'll come back to the coast again. I just, it's not about me. It's about trying to contribute. Just went down the lower level, played with those guys like Levi, McFadden, Paul Fromula, the Man Show. It's good to give the locals a shout out. Dan Pratt, all these guys who just great local guys, and we played for Terry Johnson was coaching, a legend. So it was good to just get back and just enjoy basketball. That was more of a come back, just be with the mates kind of thing and play. And we just played 1 year in the state league, and then they put it back up again. So it was cool.
Great.
Tim, to talk about your claim to fame, one of the great legacies with the Sydney Kings was bringing Josh Childress to the NBL. What an amazing person on and off the court. Tell us about, the Josh, the mentor and teammate to the other players at the Sydney Kings, what he brought.
Oh man, phenomenal. Think about you. He was a real personality too, and a real icon in the NBA. So he was the first NBA guy who was on a substantial contract to come to the NBL. Before that, Bogut was talked about him coming out with the Kings during the lockout, and Paddy came out and had a run during the lockout, but no one that was going to come over and just say, right, I'm going to straight take a contract here. But it was a very interesting time. I mean, prior to that, I'd just been asked to take a job. I actually tried to leave the Kings, and they said, look, will you be our head of basketball? And then they said, can you do it part-time? Part-time head of basketball. So there was no budget. It was crazy because everyone expected, Sydney Kings have got this budget. I think it was it was substantially lower than the $1 million salary cap.
Sure.
And there was other teams that were pushing, well over, and it was going well known, and how do you prove it and whatnot. Anyways, so I'm like, all right, I've got no money. I've got to try and Hammer's moved on. Damien Cotter, who's over at with the Chicago Bulls right now. Okay, how are we going to rebuild a team? I said, man, I got to hit the ball out of the ballpark. You know what I mean? I've got to go. How do I find something? I said, well, you can sell Sydney. I don't have money to sell, but maybe I can sell some marketing dream, or I can get sponsors or something. I gotta find something. Otherwise, we're gonna get it's gonna be tough. And so I'm kind of, I remember Damien going, Tim, stop wasting your time. And I said, man, this, because I had remember talking to Seth Curry. So Steph Curry's younger brother, who ended up playing a long time in the NBA. But I'm like, Steph Curry, we could sell that, bring in sponsors to cover that wage or whatever. And anyways, that didn't land, but his agent said, look, I got another guy, Josh Childress. Josh Childress, jeez. He had the big microphone, dunking everything. He would be a marketing dream as well.
Sure.
But he couldn't hit the three with the same consistency he was, and it was a big change, with the NBA, and he got amortized. So he's on a 5-year, $7.5 million a year deal.
Wow.
He still had 1 year to go on it, and so I'm like, whatever we pay is not really going to turn the needle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyways, his agent says, right, you got 5 minutes to talk to him. He said, I can't promise you anything. So my first conversation was, I said, it's an absolute honour to meet you, Josh, but I've just got to tell you, I just want to be really upfront. I don't really have any money.
I'll take it.
And he laughed, and he's like, man, this is the weirdest, recruitment call I've ever been on. But go ahead, Anyway, so having that time at Barker College, I met some really interesting people just organically, kids and parents, and telling me what they do. And Josh told me he had this great passion, grew up in Compton and ended up at Stanford. Like, talk about the extremes, he's in the hood and, tough, upbringing and had to sort of work his way out. His mum said, look, you got to focus on your study. You get your study done, it'll take you, so he did, and he got to Stanford with his basketball scholarship, gets drafted, plays in the NBA. It's incredible. But playing in the back of his mind, and he was the first guy to leave the NBA with a bona fide contract, right? I think it was like $30 million over, I can't remember, might have been over 3 years or something. So $10 million a year back then, it's a great contract. And he gets an offer from Greece for like $30 million for 2 years. Like, nobody leaves the NBA to go to Europe. That doesn't happen. Anyway, so he says, all right, well, Atlanta, you're on the clock, make a decision. And they were like, he goes, right, I'm out. He just went to Greece. It was like, whoa. And the NBA was like, but that took a huge toll on him. Because it was a massive shift and attracted all the media. And anyways, roller coaster. So he's going through a time where he's like, is this really what it's all about? And so he said he wanted to impress on kids there's more to life than just basketball, particularly from where he grew up. They either want to be, basketball players, rap artists, actors or whatever. So he said, what about, getting an education, being in business, all these sorts of things? So my mind's running around like crazy. I said, well, what are you interested in? He says, I'm interested in investing. I'm like, in what? And he said, technology. And it's dawned on me, I had this parent who had incredible experience, like I'm talking Intel, Dell computers, all sorts of stuff. And one of the other ones really, really big, but I don't really want to say too much on here what it was. But he's this incredible guy, right? And experience in technology and investing. I said, man, I can't promise anything, but here's this guy. Here's what he's, part of a really big, the biggest private equity company in the world. And he was a board member. I said, this is where he's at. I said, oh, I can't guarantee it, but I coach his son. He might be prepared to be a mentor. And I said, so you could come out here and you could be, you know, with the greatest respect, you go to China, he had let's say, a deal 15 times more than what ours was.
Sure. Yes.
I said you can go to China and play in China, you know, that, or you can come here and you can be a superstar. You can be the Kobe Bryant of Sydney.
Yeah.
You know, and anyways, that mentor ended up mentoring. He came here, and it was just an incredible, you know, get. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so when he came and played, he just tore up the league. It was incredible.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of people in. There was a big scuffle in Perth. I never, you know, forget. I had another dad there at Barker College. Just happened to be the DDP, you know. And he'd had this hit, and I'm like, hey man, any chance you can represent Josh? You come in, yeah, sure, Timmy. I'll just better check, make sure it's okay with the bosses and all that. Yeah,
yes.
So
you find me someone
there and
right.
represented him, helping him get through that. That was cool. But yeah, he was such. His stories are engaging, incredibly generous. So he'd take guys out to dinner and pay for it, even though he's got this nothing, you know, like. He's pretty much losing money coming out here.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, after 2 years here, he grew more as a person with all this mentorship. There was actually another, I've got to give Duncan Bennett a great shout out. He's a local guy here. You know, his son Nick Bennett, you know, used to work with and mentor. But he was, you know, head of Australasia for a company called VM, where he was another mentor. So, you know, the local guy, Central Coast, helped Greg and Josh Georges out. So he, anyways, he grew with business, started up his own business, owns an NBL team. He owns this Landspire real estate group, and he consults the NBA players. It's just, you know, he looks back on this and it was pivotal, you know, for his growth. So he made more from life, money, investing, but just more even his own personal growth from coming here and doing that, and we just got a tremendous friendship. So I'm going to see him in November and spend some time when Keira goes and plays against USC, you know, in his backyard. So we're going to go down and watch my baby girl.
Yeah, more on that shortly with Keira and our CCSE victory wrap. But time to give one of our sponsors a wrap, a brand new one too. Need quality concrete for your next project? Look no further than Easy Mix Concrete, your local family-owned concrete supplier right here on the Central Coast. Whether it's a driveway, shed, pool, or any job, big or small, Easy Mix Concrete has you covered. With reliable pre-mixed concrete, expert technical advice, and a great range of decorative finishes, Easy Mix brings your project to life, and their prices are extremely affordable. Proudly serving the coast for over 16 years. When you choose Easy Mix, you're supporting the local economy. Give them a call, 43884989. See more at easymixconcrete.com.au.
Tim, you're buzzing now. Tell us about your time as the New South Wales under-20 head coach. You know, you're in charge of the offence, the defence, you know, when to call timeouts, trying to see what the opposition's doing. Tell us about how hard that was, but the young talent that you were working with as well.
Yeah, it was a really cool time. So I had, you know, 3 years in it. You know, we finished top four every time. We got incrementally better. The last one we lost at the nail. We got the silver medal. you know, you say I got won a silver medal maybe. But I had 5 rookies and, you know, a bunch of guys that actually Australia lost to New Zealand for the first time in a long time. So some of my boys were a bit mentally and emotionally bruised from that experience, you know, like that kind of feeling a little bit knocked about. And I had this young guy who was coming through. I'd seen him play at Terrigal, and he just, again, another one, that enigma. His name was Dave O'Hickey, and he's playing in Australia now. He's playing tonight, you know, and you know, I'll probably start tearing up if I talk too much about him. But I remember watching him in this state tournament and just going, wow, man, this kid is incredible. Who is he? Why don't I know him? Where is he? Doesn't make the state teams, and you know, he's Indigenous boy, and you know, he's at a school playing with a legendary Ben Morrissey, who's a lot of young guys come through his program too. But I'm like, he still he couldn't make the state teams in these environments. Oh, man, I'm watching this kid going, wow. Anyways, spent a bit of time with him, without going sort of too deep into it, but he's from in Redfern, incredible Indigenous lineage, through his grandmother was at the Tent Embassy, one of the ladies, one of the people that started that up, But anyways, incredible. And his other grandma, I used to go in and be mentored by her. So I go and spend time with her, and people, it's so nice you're going in there and whatever. And I said, man, I'm growing. Go in there and hear these stories. And she was just a remarkable lady. Just do so much for people, and learn so much about Indigenous culture.
Sure.
Anyways, so I coach him, and he didn't want to get on the planes. I'm not going. Staying here with his nana, and his nana was quite unwell at the time, and she just said to him, you need to get him out of here, and I want you to keep an eye on him. So I took him down, we're going to play in this tournament, and he was like the barometer for learning, because he was just giving out. We have a team huddle on a really, really important talk. And his eyes are rolling back and falling asleep. He's like a narcoleptic. Some of the guys are looking around like, man, this
pretty cool.
He's got a bad attitude, man. This guy's that's disrespectful. And I'm like, man, this kid's struggling to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Very, very special kid. And so I kind of have a bit of a laugh, and. But yeah, so a lot of these guys for that journey, particularly what they were going through, and roller coaster. We had Angus Glover, I coach. There's a number of guys there, in those programs. I think just Angus and Davo, the two NBL players, from that program. But that are in the Australian team now. I've had other NBL players and other guys, but they're both. Well, Angus just got injured and he's sort of fallen away. But yeah, so it was a great experience coaching these guys. And to see so many of them go on, to the NBL, that was probably my biggest pride. And I say this any place I go and coach. For me, the great pride sits on where these players are 5-10 years from now.
Yeah.
Because that's when like as a coach or a mentor, like everyone says, you got to play the long view, and it's not about quick fixes, not just about hollow victories. It's about depth and this and that. But do you really believe it? Are you really invested in that? Are you really prepared to sacrifice your own personal ego for upfront quick success, for long-term success, and for those that you're coaching? And you're in a position of influence that can make a life-changing experience. So that's what I love. Now, Davo just got to the NBA Summer League and actually helped another young fella, Boali Bales, who's also from Redfern. So two Redfern kids in the NBA Summer League.
Yeah, great stuff.
That was a real spin.
Yeah.
So.
NBA scout for the Houston Rockets, 2018-2019. Who was your biggest success sending someone from here over there? Because you've had to look at all these players. Who were you really proud of as your time, as a scout?
It's very, very different because it's less personal connection. It's more trying to be as objective as possible, particularly in Houston. They were so analytical based. They had Daryl Morey, who started a lot of that analytical drive into the NBA, so it was more, going and assessing. This is what I say to young kids. Any of the young kids that are sitting here, might be listening to this program, or parents might be listening to this program. They said it's all about the numbers or how they perform, but my job was to go and watch how they came into the gym and how they behaved themselves when the cameras weren't watching. Like did they just little things like maybe they had injuries they're hiding, or they're little things. But then we had to do evaluations, based on projections and whatnot. So that's part of okay. Well, let's show us your ability to read what skill sets they do have, don't have. But anyways, for me, there was the one guy that actually got there
Yep.
into their program was Will McDowell White. So, Darryl White, legendary Brisbane Lions player in the AFL. And, his son, I used to watch him and go, man, like, he's very, very crafty. And I saw things he did in the national program. And maybe there's a tad of bias of, trying to look after another, Indigenous kid. I don't know, but I just definitely felt he had it. And, he's a prize ticket for the NBL right now, but he just didn't quite have that, jump shot of what they wanted in the NBA. But they loved his ability to play D. And when you I take great pride in this. There's a kid that I coached in the 20s that I've got to throw a shout out to, Matt Kenyon. And Matty, I helped him get to the G League. It wasn't through the Houston Rockets, but it was through friends here. Actually, a guy brought in the Sydney Kings intern, ended up being the GM of a G League team at the Los Angeles Lakers.
Right.
But my thing, and this is kind of how it was with Will, is with Matt, he'd finished up with Brisbane. He was worried about where he was going to go. He's back on the coast, going through a real hard time because it's hard, particularly when you get shot up straight into the NBL.
Sure.
I said, Matty, what you have is what they don't have in that environment. You go in the G League, all these guys want to score and show out and whatnot. Matty just wanted to play D and do all the little things, And I said, man, hang your hat on that, because if you go there and you do it here, you'll get back into the NBL, back into the NBL. And I said, you just got to stop in the Central Coast on your way back.
That's right.
Yeah, which he did.
Yeah.
To his credit, he did.
Yep.
We had Jaden Hodgson too, who also played and won an NBL championship with the Sydney Kings. I helped him with college. I coached him in the 20s.
Yep.
So as long as you just come back in, and,
That's right.
which he did. He come back and played. But he ended up, Matty ended up being a great success there. He didn't score points, but he played D, did everything else. Will McDowell White, same sort of thing. He was just, he could do a lot of things and very cerebral, sort of how he approached the game. But that was a cool one. He's gone on, didn't go on there at Houston, but it was a different time for Houston because they were at the top. So, I wasn't going to be looking at any prime draft picks out here, sort of speckies that might come in and be like, they didn't have two ways then, so he would have been like a two-way.
Sure. Yeah.
Tim, you mentioned your daughter Keira. She's over at the New Mexico State University now. What's the words of advice you gave her as a dad and as someone that's travelled that journey as well as a basketball player?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not even a pinch of what she is, so it wasn't even close to it. She's a remarkable little journey woman, and same with all of my daughters, Bridie and Mabel. I gotta give them a shout. They're incredible young ladies. In fact, that she models off them. Her, kind of talk about the importance of family and your own journeys and taking responsibility for your own path. And her older sister laid such an incredible example. So just in terms of traveling, and going and taking on such a journey, it sort of goes back to the formative days. I think it's so like I like to say to young people, water finds its own level. Things we might have high times, low times, but when it all sort of settles out, the work and everything that you put in and your learning will be there, and for her, I said when she wanted to build her game, Dad, I want you to coach me. I've only coached my daughters one season each. That was it.
Yeah.
So I said to her, and I run by this philosophy: if you want to be great, you got to teach yourself. Because for me, and maybe that's just how I learned it. I went over to America. My dad loved the game of basketball, put me around the basketball, coach it, whatnot. But like that journey and drive, you've got to be a little obsessive and really seek out, like the Eddie Palavinskas, seek to excel. Like, what is it that is fruitful for your journey at any given point in time? You're constantly learning those things. So for her, she developed the whole game. People were like, man, geez, she's got some skills. You taught her well. I said, no, I haven't taught her anything. She's a gym rat. She wants to get in the gym. She wants to teach herself. Oh yeah, but that shot's real nice, and that's hers. Literally, you want to be good. Watch the best shoot. Watch me. I'm just a you know, an afterthought in basketball, you know, like I'll find the best of the best and model off their game. And, you know, and she'll do it. She goes, oh, Dad, you know, like, you know, I watch Jalen Brunson, you see how he comes in and gets into that body and shifts that, you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, that's cool, you know, like, so she's developed doors to get over there. And when I was talking to the coaches, I got to share this because this is really cool.
Yeah.
Her coach over there played and won an NCAA championship under the late great Pat Summitt. You know, this is a school, massive school,
Sure.
12,500 seat stadium. But this lady played the biggest dance. You know, you're talking about play NCAA finals. You're talking about playing in front of 60,000 people. Right, you know, it's incredible. So she had a story. She said, "Look," and Keira's like, she got cut from all the state teams, didn't make any of that sort of stuff, which is really tough journey for a young girl, so hard driven because she's knee high to a grasshopper. So, you know, she's got a mother's height, you know, unfortunately, but luckily she's got a mother's looks, otherwise, you know. But anyway, so she very, very resilient, fighting her way through, you know, and you're very proud of her. And it's taken a lot of knockbacks, but we get this call. Another local guy, Miles Pierce, says this coach knows this coach. Says, "You're looking for a point guard. You need to talk to Keira Hudson, man. That kid gets overlooked." Blah blah blah. Anyways, we get on this call. They do a little homework. They get on this call, and it ends up being a 3-hour chat with this lady. She, man, he played for Pat Summitt. You know, won the NCAA championship. The assistant coach just happened to coach this other young guy I mentored through. I said, well, you need to ask him about Keira. And he's like, man, Keira's awesome. It's all just happened to work out, you know, just perfectly aligned, you know, but just all randomly, you know, which is amazing. But anyway, she said, all right, well, I remember going there with my dad. She started crying, the coach. I'm like, wow, that's very powerful. And she said, you know, dropped me off the very first session. Pat Summitt takes me to the track. What the hell are we doing on this track? What's the track got to do with basketball? Yeah. And so it's Pat Summitt. She said, I'll never forget, she was 8 months pregnant. She's on the pack. She said, girl, you're going to learn how to walk. What's walking got to do with basketball? She said, what? Really? So you think you're going to walk into the stadium, you know, in front of an NCAA championship, you know, with 60,000, whatever, packed stadium, and you feel like you can just walk on it? You know, you're going to learn how to walk. And she starts striding. She said, now keep up, you know. And I was like, wow, you know, like, Keira, she wants to mentor you. Oh, this is crazy. Anyway, they're talking. I said, is this like are you guys offering? Yeah, we're offering, you know. Like, so they've done all their homework. And I said, look, I want to know. I want to know if you know my daughter at her worst, not her best, you know, because when things don't go well, you know, you're going to still be there. You're going to be mentoring, and she said, yeah, I've watched, you know, she said, however many games. She said, there's nothing there I don't like, you know. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Anyways, so then they still, I don't know if you know about the NCAA at the moment, but it's a behemoth. It's massive. This NIL money is crazy. It's, you know, and for Michelle and I, for us, it's been so unsettled in her journey. We just wanted to be in a great environment where she could thrive, you know, be mentored. Yeah. Anyway, so they said, well, let's deal with the elephant in the room, the NIL. And I said, look, if this is about NIL, you know, like, when we're going to get into this sort of stuff, then this is going to sound crazy, but we're not interested. Well, what? Okay, that's new. Yeah, go ahead. And I said, look, for me, it's all about the mentoring. If she has a great season, then you can talk NIL, because it's all about, you know, how your impact and, you know, your following, and then there's, you know, teams can, you know, they go into the portals and what's your name, like, it's going back to that water finds its own level. As long as you go and perform, you get in the right environment, the coaches and whatnot. So if this is just some trade, I want to know that you really want her and you're invested in her. You know what I mean? That's what I want to know. Anyways, and they did that. Anyway, so they went and talked, and they went to this big sale event. I said, stop. They said, looking at you, I said, you had us at the track, you know. And so that was awesome. It was a great, you know, chat. And since going over there, they've been unreal. She's training three times a day. She's going like crazy. She's in the gym doing those hours, you know. And anytime she said, oh, you know, when they were growing up, kids, oh, this isn't available, that's isn't available. Hey, Eddie Palabinskis, lay on the floor and shoot the ball in the air. You don't need anything, you know. Just a ball, maybe. You know what I mean? But she's in there. She's got that. They got sports scientists. They got the whole box and dice. Yeah.
Yeah, mate, it's been a great chat. It's been a fascinating story for you, and now it's continuing with your daughter. So congratulations on what you've done and your mentoring, all the stuff you've done, your coaching, your playing, of course. And it's been a fantastic CCSC victory wrap. We thank our sponsors before we go, the Sports College and Easy Mix Concrete. Tim Hudson, been great talking to you,
Well,
mate.
can I just say one thing real quick?
Yes.
Just the CC, Sports College. There's a lot of kids there, a lot of hoopers there coming through, and wishing them all the best. And that's great sponsorship. And
You're not looking for a job there, mate, are you?
No. I actually talked to them about when they were trying to set it up in the early days.
Good on you, buddy.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the Easy Mix.
Yeah.
I need to reach out to them.
We'll organise a delivery.
Looking for a driveway, so yeah. Love the support.
Tim, you've been a huge asset for basketball. We spoke about your bloodlines, you know, your grandfather, yourself, your father, your daughters, but also your brother, a musician with talent as well. We'll close with about him and what he's achieved with his band.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like talking about with Keira, that passion and having that obsession to a healthy obsession. You got have that balance. But he had the #1 most played single on Australian radio with This Heart Attack. With the band Faker, his band he started up, but he didn't do music classes, fully self-taught, and kind of the more you look into it, and I say this to kids in sport, like the greatest are self-taught, and they go and seek out the best coaches, and they want to learn and get better. But he built it all from scratch, man. Learned how to play the guitar and play the piano, and he's the real star of the family. He's had multiple gigs on main stage, Big Day Out, and so we all try and get around him as a family and cut loose in the crowd.
Thanks, Tim. Much appreciated, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. Really appreciate it. Thank you, RJ.
Always a pleasure, mate. Great to see you again, mate, and all the best for the rest of your basketball involvement.
Thank you very much.
Very good,
mate. That was great,
Sorry,
mate.
Well, I have a tendency to waffle on,
I wouldn't have thought
That
that.
was captivating.
Yeah. Thanks, Jack.
People like hearing that, the depth of it all.